everybody. Facebook and Instagram show up here. Instagram. You don't have to sound.
Right. There you go.
Ready to go already. All right. welcome, everyone. Master Shep here, one of the co-founders of the Collective Health Initiative, also known as the CHI. And we're here today in the Dorothy Heights Library, Northeast Washington, D.C., with a live presentation of the health class you never had, with the topic of high blood pressure. And just as a disclaimer, the Collective Health Initiative, we are indigenous health practitioners. We are not medical doctors. So what we're sharing information is for educational purposes only, based upon our experiment and the work with natural and holistic ways of finding remedy to commonly caused diseases, some may say that plague our community. And the brother was asking me earlier, are we doing a tour? And actually, I want to say yes. We just now starting to plan that tour. And the reason being, we find that in today's climate and society, when you talk about the issues that's going on, the stress, the challenges, these or the other, health is one of those things that plagues our people, generally speaking. And so by sharing information, from our own experiences, from a more indigenous, our ancient ancestors, how they looked at health, as far as holistic, the mind, the body, the soul, and how nature, can be a healing tool for us. And so that's for the most part, that's what you look to nature and our environment to bring back ease, within our bodies. So you want to add anything to that, Doc?
Yeah, so Dr. Yu, I'm a herbalist, holistic wellness consultant. I've been doing this work for maybe about the past 17 years now, independently and in conjunction with the Collective Health Initiative. Was it been about 10 years or so?
Yeah, at least 10 years.
10 years, 11 years, something like that.
Right.
Well, I'm partnered with Master Shep. We have our sister Clarice here, who's part of us, and my queen, who's couldn't make it today, but she's also into massage therapy, Reiki, which is a form of like energy healing, what some people refer to as like laying on the hands, that type of thing like that. And what do you call that? The almost like acupuncture on the ears, but minus the needles.
So seeds.
Acupressure. Yeah, ear seeds and acupressure and that type of thing. She's into that as well. So together, we do a lot of educational presentations. Because of the whole COVID situation, we stopped doing so much physical presentations and started doing things more so online. And so this is maybe, this is our first coming back out, right?
Yeah.
It's our first coming back out to do a physical presentation, which we really prefer. We prefer to be in front of people, to see faces, to get questions, to get interaction, and to make sure that what we're speaking to is relevant to our audience. So I want to thank y'all both for coming out, or thank everybody who's witnessing. I forget about the online component, but thank everybody who is watching and in our audience today. So the topic of high blood pressure is one of the biggest issues, especially among African Americans. And it extends, of course, beyond African Americans. I don't know what the present statistics are, but I know when I first started doing these presentations, when I was into the statistics, it was estimated that 1 out of every 3 African Americans are affected by high blood pressure at some point in their life. So with something like that, this is a big thing that needs to be addressed. But at the same time, it's something that can be relatively simple to address, and it's something that, with the right information and with the right discipline, we can take the steps that's needed to be taken to correct these issues, right? Peace, how you doing? Peace, welcome, welcome. Come on in. Didn't miss much of anything. So I always like to start out by just addressing what is holistic health and what is the topic we're talking about, just to be clear, because a lot of what I've come across and me working with people is that the information that we get about the topics that we are affected by health-wise is usually very vague information that most people don't understand from a practical standpoint. And so when we say holistic health, we're talking about an approach to our health and well-being that encompasses the spirit. And when we say the spirit, we mean like our state of consciousness, not anything that has to do with religion, so to speak, but our state of consciousness, our state of being, the things that are part of who we are that we don't need to think about, so to speak. You know, we also have the mental component. The mental component encompasses the mind, how we think about things, the information that we have, how we think about things, and how we process that information. Then there's the physical component, which is, of course, the things that we need to survive and keep ourselves up and running. Our food, our shelter, our physical conditions, exercise, rest, you know, those type of things like that. And then our environment, which gets left out a lot.
Yeah.
The environment encompasses not only what's around us, but who's around us, the type of situations that we find ourselves in, and things of that nature as well. So all of those things encompass what makes up the totality of our well-being, right? When we go to the medical doctors and facilities, a lot of times it's only addressed from the physical standpoint. And they barely give information about that. And so when we're faced with something like a high blood pressure, and you say, okay, well, your blood pressure is high, we have to prescribe this drug or that drug. Do we understand what it means to have high blood pressure, what blood pressure is in the first place? Do we understand why we need to take the drug? Do we understand what the drug does to our body? How it affects it? How is this drug even helping? So this is why we formed the health class you never had. So to go into talking about blood pressure a little bit, blood pressure represents the force that the blood moves throughout the body, right? And so the blood is carried throughout the body through our blood vessels, which are like, I always equate it to like a water hose in water. You have a water hose and you turn on the faucet and the water is going to flow through there. If you turn it on low and you don't turn it all the way up, the water is going to be moving slow. It's going to come out short streams and things like that, right? That would be equivalent to low blood pressure. You turn it on medium, come out normally, gets the job done. If you turn it out really, really high, it's coming out, it's pushing out really, really fast, right? That's what high blood pressure is in essence. And the dangers that's associated with high blood pressure, let's go, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and talk about low blood pressure. Low blood pressure, the blood in the body carries nutrients, oxygen throughout the body that the body needs to support itself. So if the blood pressure is low, That means that it's not carrying those nutrients, those oxygen, the oxygen and things like that throughout the body in the way that it needs to be in order for us to function normally. Regular blood pressure, normal blood pressure, so to speak, there's no real issues with that. That's the way everything is supposed to be. High blood pressure, the danger of that is that when the blood pressure starts going at such a rapid rate and with such force, then it can actually start to damage the walls of the blood vessels. It can actually start, and usually the reason, one of the reasons associated with that is how the heart has to push the blood throughout the body. So that means that if it's really high, it means that the heart is working too hard. So over time, just as with anything, if it's working too hard and it's not really getting the proper nourishment, rest, and things to balance it out, what's going to happen? It's going to give out. It's going to get tired. So this is where we start to experience the heart attacks. This is where we start to experience the strokes and things of that nature. You know, the blood pressure is, from a physical standpoint, contributed to by the things that we tend to consume. It's also, and when I say things that we consume, we're talking about foods, beverages, and things of that nature that many of us have a general idea of things that are not good for us. So we can talk about sodas, we could talk about the fast foods. We know, I would say generally, many people know that these things are not healthy for us to eat, whether you do it anyway or not. But there's also other things that's maybe a little bit more subtle. Barbara back here mentioned salt earlier. You know, and salt is something that most people consume every day. But what type of salt? How much are we using a day? And things like that add up really, really quickly. We can have French fries. French fries, besides it being fried and cooked in a bunch of oil that doesn't really break down well in the body and leads to a lot of buildup, plaque that gets lodged in the bloodstream and can interfere with the blood flow. But then you also have the salt. And the salt content in a small thing of fries could be probably somewhere around 1,000 milligrams easily.
Hey,
Easily.
they so good too.
You know,
Fries, man.
and that's not if somebody gets heavy-handed, you know. If we go to places, you know, it's always subject to who's cooking your food. You know, so there you have those aspects of things too. And then they might use things like,
does the salt make a difference? Just curious. Or the sea salt or the blue salt, does that make a difference?
yeah, this type of salt makes a difference also, because what most people use is refined bleach white salt. And refined bleach white salt pretty much only contains sodium. So it's like,
Explain kosher salt.
say that again.
Kosher salt.
Explain kosher. Explain the
Kosher.
kosher.
I know what it means, but some recipes sometimes recommend kosher salt instead of what you talking about. And iodine salt. Kosher.
All right. So kosher has really not.
What the chefs use.
Kosher, yeah, kosher doesn't really have much to do in this conversation.
Yeah, I just want
Yeah, it doesn't really, because kosher has to do with the Jewish religion.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's kind of more or less how the salt is processed and what it's around when it's processed, than actually it having something to do with the quality of the salt, so to speak. So that's what kosher means. Like when meat could be kosher and stuff like that, but it just has to do with how it's processed and what it's around. But iodized salt is where they take iodine, which is a mineral. It's a trace mineral, which means a mineral that we need in like small amounts. And they put iodine back into the salt, because what happens with, when I say refined salt, that means that the salt, a lot of the mineral content that naturally is found in salt is removed, and then you just have sodium. And so there's other minerals that are supposed to be in salt. Like, no, if you were to get, say, like a rock from outside, right? This is kind of synonymous to salt, because salt is a mineral. It's a general term. Salt means like minerals. So you can take a rock and you can grind that rock up into a powder, right? If you grind that rock up into a powder, it's going to be a bunch of different minerals. It's not going to be one mineral. It's not going to be sodium by itself. It's not going to be calcium by itself. It's going to be different things that's combined, right? So how do we get something where it's just sodium? That's something that is not natural. So when salt is taken from wherever salt is taken from, it could be taken from the earth or it can be taken from the sea. But in essence, that's what the salt is. It's like minerals that's solidified and they ground it up, you know, and or in the case of sea salt, they evaporate it first. They evaporate the water, and then the salt minerals are left over. And those minerals naturally have a multitude of different minerals that our body needs to help to nourish our bodies, right? But now, in a way, the form that is sold to us most often, we have this white salt, which you won't go outside and find any rock that's only white. You won't go out there. It's going to be a multitude of different colors, and the different minerals that are present in those rocks represent the color structure of it, right? So while people might recommend something like sea salt, or if you've heard of Celtic salt or Himalayan salt, and why all of these different salts are popping up, is because these are the things that are more natural salts that contain other minerals that helps the body. These minerals include things like magnesium, you know, and, you know, like, what do you call it? The other salts I mentioned, Celtic salt, Himalayan salt. You can find over 50 different minerals in these salts that help to nourish the body. So in contrast to the white refined salt, people actually use these other mineral salts to help the lower blood pressure too, or to help the balance blood pressure, I should say. You know, as long as it's not overdone. That's the other aspect of it, as long as it's not overdone. But you can use these salts to cook in your food, and because it has other minerals, it helps to balance out just the sodium, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna stop there for a moment. I'm gonna pass it back over to Master Chef, talk about some of the metaphysical things or spiritual things, that energetic things that are associated with blood pressure, and then I'll come back and share some more.
Yeah, man, this is getting so good. Who's going to listen to this thing? Man, get some good information. We like getting fed too, you know, get some information about the salt and the minerals. So this is awesome. This is awesome. Is everybody enjoying themselves so far? Pretty good information?
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we ain't going to take too much time, because we want to get back to Dr. Yu, what he had to say about, you know, different foods and things like that. So we do want to mention, as he mentioned earlier, we each have a different lane, similar to how we look at I don't want to not eat too much when we're in the camera here.
You're good. You're okay.
Okay. Most people are familiar with medical school or the doctors, where, generally speaking, you go to medical school, and then after medical school, you learn the general about the body, things like that. And then you may go into a specialty, brain surgery, heart surgery, pediatrics, podiatry. And so generally, if you go, say, like to a foot doctor, then he finds something else wrong. He may say, oh, you got to go and see so-and-so doctor because of their specialty. And so we organize the same way as far as each one of us. We're aware of the holistic, how the entire body works, the physical and metaphysical. We each have our lane. Yours truly, our lane is the metaphysical. We spoke about the spirit earlier, the mental and the emotional. So that's what my person does. And even in the language, my person, we saying this is the physical body that you see. Because who I am a soul brother. A soul, a unique expression of God that's enhanced in this physical body. So the physical body is what the soul uses to express itself, to feel and eat and do all these things. So just a little bit of disclaimer on if you hear my person say my person is talking about this physical body, right? And metaphysics and high blood pressure. One of the most common things that we can relate, if we think about it, if we haven't already, is stress. Because one of the things when we talk about stress, tension, and one thing that we may be familiar with also is what's called fight or flight. Everybody familiar with fight or flight? That's when you either just having to fight or flight, run. And in those situations, fight or flight, generally speaking, the blood pressure is high because there's a lot of blood that got to come through the body because we need this blood. This adrenaline's going. We got to do something. We got to run fast. We need blood. We got to do it. We got to do it. We got to do it. However, back in the day, we was in the jungle, in the hut, a lion coming. Oh, the lion. Oh, got to run. Something like that. But generally, in the urbanized communities, we in the car, road rage. But that same fight or flight may come up. Somebody may say something. We see something on the news. That same vibration may come up. That stress or tension, that high blood pressure, because it does feel that pressure now. And so one of the things, as a metaphysician, we like to bring our attention back to its foundation is the breath. Because how many in here have went all day and been like, went all day, haven't eaten a thing all day? Anybody did that before? Just forgot? At least one, right? But all day, man, didn't eat nothing. Or went all day and been like, you know what, man, I ain't drink no water all day. May have had some juice or something, but may have had some coffee, but like actual water, dehydration may set in. So we can actually go all day without either food or water. How many have went all day and been like, you know what, I ain't even breathe today? Anybody? Right. Nobody. That breath is important. That breath is important. And that breath is so important. It's so vital to our life that most of us don't even think about it until it's short. There was a shortness of breath, or something caught in the throat. We can't breathe. So these things happen with the breath that is so important. But on the other side also, by being more intentional with the breath is a good way to, first of all, detox. Because when you breathe out carbon dioxide. First of all, we don't need that. Get rid of that stuff. So you're actually detoxing with the carbon dioxide. And a step further metaphysical with the breath, if there's a situation, either past situation or future situation that you don't want or is unpleasant, and you think about it, it's not here right now, but you think about it, and you get the fight or flight, that breath can help calm you down, bring you down. So you're detoxing, releasing from that feeling, from the vibration of the thought that you're thinking about. They say, sometimes say, take a deep breath, calm down. And you say, okay. Then you may take another one. I'm going to do 3 because it feels so good right now. And the hands, when here to emphasize, generally, you're breathing in, if your lower abdomen is expanding and contracting, you're not chest or shallow breathing. And ideally, we should have breathed before you came up here because my person feels a difference. It feels more relaxed. It's just that simple. And so, what we want to leave you with is just the power of the breath. Again, because we with the breath all the time. They even say the breath of life. In some spiritual contexts, they say even God is even closer to you than your own breath, right? And so, how does this work in a more practical way, as far as breathing, the breath, and high blood pressure and detoxing? Is anyone familiar with the term chakras? Chakras, okay. Some are, some not. Basically, the chakras are energy centers throughout the entire body. But generally, when people say your chakras, they say your chakras. Generally speaking, they're referring to seven major chakras that generally line the spine. As you're sitting down now, you're sitting down on your buttocks, the tailbone. That's what the root chakra, the first chakra is. And the seventh one, or the last one, at the top of the head, like a baby, the soft spot of the baby, that's the crown chakra. So, and there's these energy centers. And for example, our throat chakra is right here, a little indentation like just above it. And how these energy centers work is, sometimes if we want to communicate something, if we don't communicate in spirit of God saying, or it's for our best interest to speak up for ourselves. If we don't speak up for ourselves, then this energy center, known as the throat chakra, it becomes somewhat what they say closed, because it's not being able to express itself. And if it becomes closed, then what may happen is it may affect the lungs, because the lungs is associated with the throat chakra. Then there's an emotion called grief that's associated with the lungs and the throat chakra. So some of these chakras, at least 5 of them, have an association with emotions. So whether you know about the chakras or not, it's one of those like butterflies or not. You can feel certain things like butterflies in the stomach, some in the heart. You come across somebody, you feel good. You see, you got this feeling. Your chakras are talking to you, right? And so what happens is, by being intentional with the breath, every day is this recommendation, if it resonates, when we say check in with yourself. Because a lot of times stress is tension. It just comes when there's a disagreement within the physical body. From a common perspective, it says when your heart and mind don't agree sometimes. Like the heart says you have the best intentions to do this. But sometimes the mind gets distracted. You start thinking about this. We can say, oh, we have this vision of doing this job. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Somebody say something. Oh, it's going to be. So we can go back and forth with our thinking. So as we relax, it says, why do I feel this way about this situation? Whatever it is. And just talk to yourself. And the breathing is important because when you slow down and just breathe, and the analogy my person like to use is like the child, the mind is a child. Because when you're breathing, you're saying, sit down, child, sit down, mind. Somebody called it the monkey mind. And let's talk about this. The day you was in this car ride and somebody you did something, or somebody said something, they always say something. Why do you keep letting them get to you? And then you say, I'm bigger than that, because and then it's self-talk. You begin to talk to yourself, which is good. Some people say, don't talk to yourself. But talking to yourself is good because again, the spirit, who you really are, the soul is in here. And so is God. At least that's what Yeshua said in the Bible. God, Jesus say, God's on the inside. So when you start out, our breathing helps us get closer to God. When we get closer to God, as we say, why we do this, God can say, well, there's a lesson to be learned. There's a chance we get the insight. Then we get the insight, we can release the so-called feelings about it that wasn't pleasant. Then we feel good, joyful about, oh, there's a lesson learned, and we can move forward with the lesson that we got. So in a sense, we're transmuting that stress, something we feel, oh, why did this happen? From an emotional perspective or mental perspective. This is a metaphysician speaking here. Oh, why did this happen? And when we get a chance, either right now start breathing, or when you get home later on, man, that was an event today. Make sure you get some quiet time, sit down and say, why did we experience that? God, what's going on? Why did we checking with God, and it helps relieve that stress, helps relieve that tension. And then this also builds a relationship with God, so there's no tension there. And also you become more confident with whenever something goes on, you can breathe, talk to God, get some clarity, and be stress-free. At least in theory. Again, this is informational purposes only, educational purposes, education, and experiences. This is my person's lane. And if anyone, would like to either talk more about the breath, coaching, my person does coaching sessions, to explain more about the breath and how you can use it to really begin to make a subtle shift, in a major way. Sometimes it's the smallest things, like the breath. It is so powerful. We do it all day, but we sometimes forget about it. But if it's just that powerful, if we give a little bit of attention every day to the breath, all we gotta say is watch the magic happen. So that's all we got on the breath and the high blood pressure and stress, and reach out, Collective Health Initiative, or see us after the presentation. All right.
Sure.
Good, thanks.
All right. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about foods more in depth. For the last, I think we got about 15 minutes left. So I'm gonna try to keep it to about 10, 12, and maybe open up the last few minutes for questions. But we hear a lot about what we shouldn't do. What should we do? What are the things that are healthy, especially for blood pressure? All right. First thing I start with is looking at how much water are we drinking? Are we drinking enough water on a daily basis? Because water is something that helps to regulate the way that the blood is thin or thick inside the body. And if the blood is very thick inside the body, is it going to be harder for the blood to move through the body, or is it going to be easier for the blood to move through the body? Thick things are going to tend to take more effort, right? If something is very heavy, it's going to take more effort to push it. If something is not so heavy, it's going to take less effort to push it. So we want to make sure we're being properly hydrated, right? So the gauge, and this is an approximate gauge. The gauge is we should be doing approximately half our body weight in ounces of water per day. So I may weigh somewhere around 160, 170 pounds approximately. So half of that is what? Let's see if my math is correct. 85. So I should be doing about 85 fluid ounces of water a day, approximately, right? What does that mean in practical terminology? Somewhere between 2 to 3 liters or 2 to 3 quarts of water a day for me, for my weight. Yeah, quarts, liters are approximately the same, approximately, right? So somewhere in that range, I want to be doing that per day. Maybe some days I might do 2, maybe some days I might do 3, maybe some days I might do in between. Maybe some days I might fall off and do a little less than 2, but then I might want to compensate a little bit more later on, right? Just to make sure I'm maintaining the right balance. Now, how I gauge myself, there's 2 ways how I gauge myself. Because blood pressure, luckily for me, or fortunately, I don't want to say luckily, fortunately for me, I don't have that issue. I'm 42 now. Many people in my family, how they talk about genetics and stuff like that, and blood pressure, how blood pressure runs in the family, is somewhat of a myth. It has a lot to do with your lifestyle habits and how you maintain yourself. But you can have a tendency to lean towards those conditions if you're not making the right efforts to keep yourself up, so to speak. So I make a very conscious effort to make sure that I'm keeping myself up in those ways, because blood pressure high blood pressure and diabetes are very prevalent in my family, right? So how I gauge myself with my water and hydration, one way is I'll take my finger, right? And I'm going to demonstrate this live. Now, I don't know if anybody can see. Can everybody see my finger? I'm going to press my finger down like this, right? And you see how it pops right back up? That's what it should do. Shouldn't take a long time. If I go like this and my finger doesn't pop right back up in about a second or so, and it stays indented for a while before it comes back to its normal shape, that means that the hydration level should be up more. That's one way that I gauge myself. The other way I gauge myself with hydration is through my urine. When I go to the bathroom and I urinate, if my urine is very dark yellow, then I know that I need more water. If my urine is totally clear where it looks like water, that means I can kind of back off of the water a little bit. It should be kind of more in between, like almost like a lightish yellow. A light yellow, the little tinge of yellow, that kind of thing like that. Not like a strong yellow, and definitely not a dark yellow. If it starts going into dark yellow to almost like a brownish kind of color, that's a sign of dehydration, big time. And if your urine burns when it comes out or anything like that, or it kind of hurts when it comes out, that's a sign of, it can be a sign of dehydration, or it can be a sign of something else going wrong, right? So those are two major things that I use to gauge hydration. Very important. Second thing, in terms of foods, and this is going to sound very cliche, but we want to make sure that we're using more fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. Now, in terms of fresh fruits, you almost can't go too wrong. I kind of steer away from giving too much specifics because one, it'll take a lot of time, and two, it's based on the individual. Everybody's body is not the same. I might say, eat pineapples, and then there might be somebody allergic to pineapples. So obviously, that's not something they want to do for them, right? But at the same time, as a generality, we can use that. So we could say, okay, but in general, most fruits, especially fruits that have a water base to it, fruits that kind of juicy when you eat them, are a good generality as a gauge for which you can use to kind of help to control blood pressure if it's high. So pineapples can be included into that. Citrus fruits could be included into that. Berries are known for that. Your melons, we're coming across the warmer months, so now the melons and things like that are going to be coming out. Cherries, so on and so forth. We can go down the line, right? Now, when we go into our vegetables, we can use the same kind of gauge. The vegetables that have higher water content, things like cucumbers, celery, lettuces, especially romaine lettuce. Very, very good for helping to lower blood pressure. And even things that might be a little bit on the drier side, I can mention asparagus too. But even things that might be like on the drier side, but they're leafy greens, like your collard greens, your spinach and things like that can be useful for helping to control blood pressure as well. Either raw or lightly steamed is the best way usually to utilize them. Even though people can cook them down and they lose a lot of their nutrients that way, but you can still use that if you don't add a whole bunch of salt and the fat backs and the things that people add to the greens to try to flavor them. That can potentially raise blood pressure too.
What about the pot liquor? If they boil it down, drinking the pot liquor, the juice with that.
Yeah, that can be helpful also. Yes, but lightly steamed or raw is better.
Okay.
Yes, generally speaking.
Gotcha.
There's exceptions to that too. So those are the things we want to concentrate on, because that's the backbone of what's healthy for us. Our fruits, our vegetables, our plant-based food, whole plant-based foods, right? When we start to get outside of that and we start to eat the meats, the dairy products, and the junk snack foods and things like that, then we're getting away from things that are as healthy from us. We get into, even from a nutritional standpoint, we get into kind of like what's called the secondary forms of nutrition. And then the more processed that the food is, usually the less nutrition it contains that helps us. So the simpler foods, for proteins, you could do beans, lentils, seeds, nuts. Even vegetables have small amounts of protein. People think protein only comes from meat. That's a myth also. Many, many different sources of protein from plants as well. And when it comes to things like cooking oils, for those who cook for themselves, generally, most oils are not good to cook with if you're dealing with high blood pressure. You kind of want to stay away from cooked oils. One of the best oils to use, there's 2 oils that I typically recommend with high blood pressure in terms of incorporating it. But one is more practical than the other in this society. The other one you may or may not have heard of. The one that's the most practical is olive oil. Olive oil is very easy to find, and it has a flavor that's relatively palatable for most people, right? You do want to make sure that you get an olive oil that's a good quality olive oil. So you want to look for 100%. You want to look for extra virgin. 100% extra virgin unrefined olive oil. And it's best to use that either raw, like how you would drizzle it over salads and things like that, or over your vegetables, or on very low heat if you're going to do something with olive oil in terms of cooking. Olive oil is not something you want to fry stuff in or that kind of thing like that. If you do that and you stick to that, it's better for the body, and it lubricates the blood vessels and things like that, helps the blood to move through more freely and more easily. The other oils, the vegetable oils, the canola oils, the corn oils, and those things that are more popular, which most of these restaurants and stuff like that use as well, the body doesn't break it down, especially when it gets heated past a certain temperature, and it builds up plaque that starts to get lodged against the walls of the blood vessels, and it narrows the blood vessels, and so it makes the blood harder to push through the body. So olive oil is one of the only oils that tends not to do that on a regular basis. The other oil I'll just mention is called palm fruit oil. It's more of a tropical oil, has a stronger flavor to it. It has like an orange-red color to it, but can be useful also. A little bit more difficult to find here. You have to go to special stores and things like that, right? Now, aside from that, I'm an herbalist. I want to talk about 3 food herbs that can be useful. The first one is garlic. You see, if you ever go to health stores, you can see different garlic supplements. People would take garlic and put it in capsules and sell it as a high blood pressure supplement. Garlic, you can take fresh garlic from the store, and even like a good way to utilize the garlic, going back to the olive oil, is you can take a clove of garlic, fresh garlic, and crush it up into olive oil, like a spoonful of olive oil, say like 1 clove to about a tablespoonful of olive oil. Crush it up in there and let it sit for about 10 minutes and swallow it down. The garlic works almost like and it also helps to stimulate circulation in the body. So garlic is number 1. The second thing is parsley. Parsley, the herb, the culinary herb that a lot of people use to flavor foods and things like that. Parsley helps to relax the blood vessels. So it helps to what they call is dilate them, open them up, right? So if the blood vessels are narrow and the blood is having trouble going through, and you take something like a parsley, the parsley is going to say, okay, it's narrow now. We're going to relax it a little bit, give it a little bit more space to move. And parsley is also a natural cleanser for the body in terms of like not really through the bowels, but through the urinary tract. So it's going to help to improve the flow of urine. So a lot of times, one of the ways that blood pressure drugs work, one of the ways is that some of them help you to urinate more, right? They call those diuretics, water pills, and generally they're good, but they can also dehydrate the body. So parsley can do the same, have the same kind of action. Parsley can be used as a tea. So you can use, when we say tea, it's kind of a general term, but the same way like how you would do a tea bag, minus the tea bag. But you want to let the parsley sit in the boiling hot water for at least maybe like about 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. Let it steep there, you cover it, and then you drink the water from that. Very good for that. Again, there's also parsley that's sold in capsules and things like that as well. And you can just incorporate more of it into your salads and things of that nature. Some people even juice parsley if you have a juicer, or blend it up in, like vegetable soups and whatever. Many different ways you can incorporate that. So I talked about garlic, I talked about parsley, and I think the last thing that I'll mention will be, let's go with chamomile. Chamomile, which is a common tea that you can find. And chamomile helps the body to relax, helps to calm down stress. So a lot of people know chamomile for helping you to get better sleep, but that's, in essence, it's the same principle. You can use that during the day and it'll help to kind of keep you a little calmer too, I do make herbal tea blends myself, and those combinations have other herbs that are in them, which help with the way that the body responds to stress, which is a different thing than actually dealing with stress from a real-time perspective. But you can also fortify your body. Say, I'm going to build up the way that I respond to stress, the adrenal glands. So that way, when the stress hits, it's not going to affect me so dynamically. So there's herbs that deal with that. It's going a little deeper into the herbal medicine thing. So I'm not really going to touch on that today because I want to keep it something where it's tangible. But if you're interested, you can see me about that. We can talk more about it. I have those things available outside of the library. And, we can make arrangements on that. But any closing questions?
What about hibiscus tea?
Hibiscus can also be useful. Hibiscus works almost in a similar way like parsley. Yeah, but that's another one. So many different things that can be used. Yes. And hibiscus is part of one of my tea blends. Any other questions about anything?
No question. Coconut oil or there's some grapeseed oil made for 500 degrees. Does that make a difference? Like coconut oil, let's say if you want to fry something on a higher temperature, coconut or grapeseed that says 500 degrees high heat. Does that matter?
All right. If I'm going to give the scientific answer, which is the real answer, then I would not recommend that.
Okay.
Neither one.
Okay.
What about avocado?
If I'm giving the scientific answer, there's the scientific answer, then there's the practical answers, right? Sometimes they coincide and sometimes they clash. The scientific answer, if I'm working with somebody and I'm saying, look, this is what you want to do to get better. You're dealing with this issue right now. It's up here. You don't want to be cooking anything in oil at a high temperature. Anything.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you're looking at it like that,
Uh-huh.
if you got a little bit of leeway and this and that, it's a little bit different, but you still want to stay away from what's called refined oils. Refined oils are oils that are already kind of like preheated at very high temperatures, and they lose a lot of their natural qualities. So, for example, coconut oil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's been studies done on this too. Coconut oil should naturally taste like a coconut to some degree, right? Because it's coming from a coconut.
Right.
If you have sunflower oil,
Mm.
it should naturally taste like a sunflower.
That makes sense.
If you get sunflower oil, you get coconut oil, and it's like bland, and there's no hint of a sunflower flavor, no hint of a coconut flavor, then it's typically refined. That means it's preheated at those very high temperatures. And once it's heated at those temperatures like that, they'll do that because it'll kind of like, sometimes for culinary purposes, you don't want a strong flavor of something inside of your food. So they'll do that. But health-wise, it makes it where the body is unable to break it down right. And so anything that the body can't break down right that you're ingesting is gonna cause inflammation, and that's going to in turn cause plaque inside the body. So that's why my answer is what it is. Generally oils, once something, because fats are heat sensitive. So fats, when you start to heat stuff up past a certain level, it's not good. Because the body is going to cool it down. It's like if you've ever had chicken, and say like you've cooked chicken or fried chicken or whatever, and then you put it in the refrigerator, and then you take it out again, and it got that film on it. It's the same principle that's happening inside the body.
Oh. Well.
Any
I'm
other
glad you never had, ladies and gentlemen.
any other questions? Popcorn, again, that's relative. I say it's relative because some people have issues with corn. Corn for some people, it can cause a lot of inflammation, and some people they can digest corn better. So it just depends on the person. Popcorn, if it's plain popcorn, it depends on the person. If it's something with additives, then it's probably a no. Any other closing questions, comments? All right. Well, we want to thank y'all for coming out. Again, we're the Collective Health Initiative. And if you're online, on social media, you can find us under the name Collective Health Initiative, on Instagram at Collective Health Initiative. You can put in Collective Health Initiative on Facebook.
Yeah.
It should come up. It'll have this logo that Master Chef shirt has,
Yes.
because there's another Collective Health Initiative on Facebook.
Is it?
Yep. So you want to look for this one so you know it's the right one.
I started out with that.
Yeah, okay, good.
And also, again, we're going to start this tour up at some point, so if there's any topic that you would like for us to present, either let us know, and better yet, put it on our sign that should at the back, and that we can email you the next time we have a library or function with your topic, or whenever we have another topic, so we like to grow together, heal together,
Indeed.
feel good together.
How do we, if we wanted to, take advantage of getting the herbs that you have? How do we do that? Through
Well, yeah, you can do it through there, or I'll give you my direct number.
There it is.
202-469-0264.
and can you make things like?
Yep.
Oh yeah, and if anyone know of anybody who's like really chronic, and they're looking for alternative options, you know, the collective health initiative, we get together and create a regimen, a protocol for them based upon all of our modalities. 3 to 6 month regimen, to assist them if they're open to alternative ways of restoring health. All right.
All right, thank y'all. Peace and blessings. And anyone who wants to talk with us,
We here.
we here.
And online, send something out. You want to topic and stuff, we got you.
I'm going to the local. Be right back.
Okay.
I need to go.